They chose the wrong boy to bully because his sister was trained to protect him. 12-year-old Malik Harris stepped into Riverside Middle School with his backpack hugged tightly to his chest. The hallways were loud. Too loud. For Malik, an autistic boy who found comfort in quiet routines, this place felt like chaos. Whispers followed him. Why does he walk like that? Why doesn't he look at anyone? Malik kept his head down. He wasn't good at talking to strangers. But he tried to stay brave, because his big sister, Zara, had said that today would be a good day. He hoped she was right. At recess, 3 boys cornered Malik behind the gym, a place where teachers rarely passed and where trouble often hid in the shadows. Tyler, the self-proclaimed king of the playground, walked with the swagger of someone who had never been challenged, his 2 followers, Bryce and Jonah, flanking him like guards protecting a crown he didn't deserve. Malik stood frozen, his back against the cold brick wall, clutching his notebook close to his chest. It wasn't just paper to him, it was his world, the place where he drew stories, emotions, and characters he couldn't put into words. Tyler snatched the notebook without hesitation, flipping through the pages with exaggerated disgust. "What's this? Drawings? Why don't you talk? You weird or something?" he mocked, waving the pages like they were trash. Bryce laughed, nudging Jonah, who joined in because he always laughed when the others did. Malik's breathing grew heavy. The world blurred, sounds faded. His hands curled against his chest as he rocked slightly, a small movement barely noticeable unless someone knew what it meant, and none of them did. They didn't understand that this was how he grounded himself when the anxiety built too fast, too strong, too loud. "Look, he's doing the freaky thing again," Bryce said, pointing and snickering. Malik felt the sting behind his eyes. His throat tightened, but no words came out. They never did when he needed them most. Tyler shoved him hard. Malik stumbled and dropped to his knees, gravel biting into his skin, his notebook falling open beside him, pages bent, drawings smeared with dirt. Tyler stepped on one of the pages, twisting his shoe as if crushing Malik's world made him feel bigger. "What's wrong, Malik?" Tyler taunted. "Cat got your tongue, or are you just too stupid to speak?" Malik shut his eyes. The fear pulsed through his chest like a drumbeat. His fingers trembled uncontrollably now. He didn't want to cry, not here, not in front of them, but the panic clawed at him from the inside, tightening around him until breathing felt like trying to pull air through a pinhole. Then Tyler lifted his fist, the type of fist that promised a bruise, the type that Malik had learned to fear long before today. Jonah glanced around nervously. "Jude may be a teacher." "Shut up," Tyler snapped. "He won't tell, he never tells, he can't." Malik braced for impact, his arms instinctively curling to shield his head. And then a voice split the air like a blade, sharp, cold, controlled, and carrying a force no kid on that playground had ever heard before. "Touch him and I'll break your wrist." Every sound stopped. Even the breeze seemed to freeze midair. Tyler's fist hung suspended as he turned his head slowly. Standing behind them, feet planted firmly on the concrete, eyes locked with a predator's precision, was Aisha, Malik's older sister. But this wasn't the Aisha that teachers praised for her polite manners or the one who always had her hair tied neatly in a bun. This was the Aisha who had trained 5 years in karate, who moved with the kind of stillness that warned of stored power, who protected her brother like a lioness guarding her only cub. She didn't look scared, not even a little. She looked like someone who had already calculated the next 10 seconds, and none of the outcomes were good for Tyler. Tyler tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "We're just messing around, step away from him," Aisha said, her voice dangerously calm, not loud, not shaky, just a warning dipped in steel. Bryce and Jonah backed up instantly, their instincts screaming at them to retreat, but Tyler, stubborn and stupid, didn't move. "Or what?" he challenged, puffing his chest. Aisha took one step forward, just one, but it was enough to make Tyler's bravado crack like thin ice under a heavy boot. "Or," she said, eyes narrowing, "you'll spend the rest of the week explaining to the nurse why your wrist bends the wrong way." Malik, still on the ground, felt the panic loosen slightly. His sister's presence was an anchor in a storm, pulling him back to safety. Aisha didn't break eye contact with Tyler as she crouched beside Malik, gently picking up his notebook, brushing dirt off its cover with a care that made Malik's chest tighten with gratitude. "Get up, little bro," she murmured softly, soft enough only he could hear. Then she stood again, placing a protective hand on Malik's shoulder. "Now," she said to Tyler, "walk away." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Tyler, realizing he was facing someone he absolutely could not intimidate, stepped back. Aisha's stance didn't change. Her eyes followed them like a hawk tracking prey as the three boys stumbled away, muttering excuses, but none daring to look back. Only when they disappeared around the corner did Aisha finally exhale. She turned to Malik and gently lifted his chin. "You okay?" Malik nodded, small, shaky, but real. And for the first time that day he felt safe, because Aisha wasn't just his sister. She was his shield, and the bullies had just learned what that truly meant. Zara Harris stood at the gate, arms crossed, her school uniform still on from morning classes, the edge of her black belt peeking out of her sports bag like a shadowed warning. Anyone at Riverside Middle who had even heard her name knew exactly who she was. The girl who had won 3 junior martial arts championships before she turned 13, the girl who trained every morning at sunrise while everyone else slept, the girl whose discipline scared even the PE teachers, and most importantly, the girl you absolutely never wanted to fight with. Her presence alone felt like a shift in the air, as if the ground straightened under her feet and the world itself tensed in respect. Tyler, Bryce, and Jonah didn't see her at first. They were too focused on Malik, who still sat on the ground clutching his notebook like a shield of paper. Tyler towered over him, trying to regain the confidence he had lost earlier when Aisha had scared him off, but the truth was clear in his stiff posture and darting eyes. He wasn't as invincible as he pretended to be. Zara, from a distance, took in everything. The fear in Malik's eyes, the triumphant smirk Tyler tried to keep, the way Bryce looked unsure and Jonah looked like he'd rather melt into the pavement. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She simply walked toward them with the calm, calculated steps of a soldier approaching a battlefield she had already mapped out in her head. Every student on the yard who noticed her arrival felt their stomachs drop. They knew what was coming. Tyler finally turned when he felt the shift around him, when whispers rippled across the playground like wind brushing through tall grass. His smirk faded the moment he saw her. Zara stepped between him and Malik with a precision that felt rehearsed, though it was instinct. Protection came naturally to her. "You think you're tough?" she asked, her voice steady, cool, and razor-sharp. "Try picking on someone who fights back." Her words slid into the air like steel sliding from a scabbard. Tyler forced a smirk, though it was shaky at the edges. "You gonna hit me? You can't." He didn't finish the sentence because Zara moved faster than his brain could keep up. Before his mouth even closed, she stepped in, eyes locked on his hand. With one swift, controlled motion, she knocked Malik's notebook from Tyler's grip. The slap of paper hitting pavement snapped through the air louder than any shout. Tyler's eyes widened. He hadn't even seen her hand move. A half-second later, another strike, clean, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. She grabbed his wrist, twisted, and applied just enough pressure to force him down until his knees hit the ground with a thud. She didn't break anything. She didn't even bend far enough to cause lasting harm, but she bent far enough for pain to shoot up his arm like lightning. Bryce gasped. Jonah stumbled backward. The circle of nearby students grew wider as everyone realized they were witnessing something legendary. Tyler's mouth dropped open, his breath hitching in shock. He couldn't move. He couldn't fight. He couldn't even speak. Zara leaned in, her voice low but powerful enough to echo in every direction. "This is a warning," she whispered. Her grip tightened for a single heartbeat, making Tyler's face twist in pain before she suddenly released him. He crumpled forward, clutching his wrist, wheezing, stunned, not just from pain but from humiliation. He had been taken down in front of half the school by a girl who didn't even break a sweat. She stepped back, her stare colder than winter air. "Next time you try to scare someone smaller than you," she continued, her voice steady, "remember this moment." Tyler didn't answer. He couldn't. His pride was shattered, lying on the ground right beside Malik's notebook. Bryce and Jonah stood frozen, as if any movement might draw Zara's attention and bring the same fate down on them. "Pick it up," Zara ordered. Bryce jolted as though she had spoken directly into his spine. "What?" "The notebook," she said. "Give it back." Bryce scrambled to grab it, brushing dirt off frantically before handing it to Malik like it was a sacred object. Malik took it slowly, eyes wide, breathing uneven. He had seen people defend him before, Aisha earlier, his teachers sometimes, but no one moved the way Zara moved. No one stopped danger before it even fully formed. Zara crouched slightly and looked Malik in the eyes with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the warrior she had just become. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Malik nodded, hugging his notebook close. "Good," she said. She stood again and faced the bullies, her expression unchanging. "Now leave." That was all she said. That was all she needed to say. Tyler, still shaken, stumbled to his feet and backed away. Bryce and Jonah followed instantly, all three of them disappearing around the corner without a single word. And the crowd, silent, completely silent. Because everyone realized something at the same time. Zara Harris wasn't just the school's martial arts champion. She was the new line nobody dared to cross. And Malik, quiet, gentle Malik, had just gained a protector more fearsome than anyone could have imagined. Minutes later, the quiet tension of the hallway followed them into Principal Ward's office, a room lined with framed certificates, dusty trophies, and a stack of incident reports that never seemed to shrink. The air felt thick, as if the walls themselves were waiting to hear what would unfold. Tyler sat in the chair farthest from the door, arms crossed defiantly, his two friends shrinking behind him like shadows too scared to detach. Malik and Zara sat opposite them, Malik small and trembling, Zara composed and silent, her expression unreadable, her black belt tucked neatly inside her sports bag, but radiating the same warning presence it always did. Principal Ward, a tall man with tired eyes and the posture of someone who had mediated far too many playground battles, took his seat behind the large oak desk and folded his hands. "All right," he said slowly, "who's going to start?" Tyler shot up before anyone else could speak. "His sister attacked me," he yelled, pointing at Zara like she was a wild animal loose in the room. "She grabbed me, twisted my wrist, she assaulted me." His voice cracked near the end, frustration and humiliation mixing into something messy and loud. Zara didn't flinch. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. Instead, she sat perfectly still, her hands folded on her knees, her eyes fixed on a point past Tyler, as if she refused to acknowledge his version of the world. Malik beside her tried to shrink into the chair. His fingers curled around his notebook, the edge digging into his palms. Every noise in the room seemed too sharp, the ticking of the wall clock, the rustle of Tyler's jacket, the creak of the principal's chair. Tyler continued, voice rising. "She came at me out of nowhere and twisted my wrist. She's crazy. I didn't even do anything wrong. She just attacked me." "Tyler," Principal Ward said, raising a hand for calm, "we will hear everyone's side. Sit down." Tyler slumped into his seat, muttering beneath his breath. Zara stayed quiet, her jaw tightening just slightly, barely noticeable unless someone knew her well. Malik's breathing was shaky, his thoughts scattered. Confrontations always overwhelmed him, and rooms like this, bright lights, direct questions, people staring, made his mind swirl. But something inside him pushed. A tiny spark. A memory of Zara stepping between him and danger. A memory of Aisha earlier that day. A memory of someone finally standing for him. And then Malik did something he rarely managed to do when fear wrapped around his throat. He spoke. "Tyler pushed me," he said in a soft but steady voice. Everyone froze. Zara's eyes snapped to him in gentle surprise. Principal Ward leaned forward, listening carefully. Even Tyler's mouth fell open slightly. Malik swallowed hard and continued. He took my notebook. He kept laughing at me, and he scared me." His voice wavered but didn't break. His fingers tightened on the notebook, knuckles white, but he didn't look away. He didn't hide. For the first time, he let someone hear him. Tyler's face drained of color, the bravado melting away like ice under fire. "That's not he's lying," Tyler sputtered, but the tremble in his voice betrayed him. Principal Ward didn't even look at Tyler yet. Instead, he spoke softly. "Malik, thank you for telling me that." Malik lowered his gaze, unsure how to respond. Zara gently rested her hand on his back, a silent reassurance. "You did it. I'm proud of you." Principal Ward finally shifted his attention toward Tyler, his expression falling into disappointment, the kind that hit harder than anger. "Tyler," he said slowly, "this school has zero tolerance for bullying. We have multiple witnesses who reported the altercation behind the gym. You took Malik's notebook, you shoved him, and you threatened him." Tyler stiffened. Bryce and Jonah shrank behind him even further, guilt written across their faces like neon signs. "Zara defended her brother," Principal Ward continued. "From what I've heard, she used minimum force to stop further harm. Whether you like it or not, what she did falls under reasonable defense." Tyler opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, then let out an angry exhale through his nose. Principal Ward didn't wait for him to respond. "You and your friends will face disciplinary action, detention for the rest of the week, a written reflection essay." And he added firmly, "You owe Malik an apology." Tyler's jaw tightened so hard it looked like it might crack. "Say it," Principal Ward said. Now, the room sat heavy with silence. Finally, Tyler muttered through clenched teeth, "Sorry." "Look at him," Principal Ward instructed. Tyler's eyes flicked up reluctantly, landing on Malik for half a second. "I'm sorry," he repeated, slightly clearer this time. It wasn't heartfelt. It wasn't sincere. But it was the first apology Malik had ever received from him. Malik nodded once, his breathing slowly returning to normal. Something warm flickered in his chest, small, almost fragile, but real. Relief, safety, validation. For once, someone believed him. Zara saw the subtle change in his posture, the way his shoulders relaxed just enough, the way his grip on the notebook loosened. She gave him a tiny nod, almost invisible to anyone else, but to Malik it felt like sunlight breaking through cloud. Principal Ward closed the folder on his desk. "Good, this meeting is adjourned. Malik, Zara, you two may go." Malik stood slowly, his legs still trembling slightly but stronger than they had been before. Zara guided him out with a hand on his shoulder. And as they stepped into the hallway, Malik felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the certainty that he wasn't alone. Not today, not anymore. After school, Zara walked Malik home, their steps slow and quiet as the afternoon sun dipped low behind the rooftops, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gold. Malik held her arm tightly, not out of fear anymore, but out of comfort, out of the simple relief that she was there, solid and warm beside him. The world felt calmer with her next to him, the sidewalks less threatening, the distant shouts of other kids less sharp. "You came," Malik whispered, his voice small but steady. "I was scared." Zara looked down at him, her face softening in a way it rarely did anywhere else. She gently squeezed his hand, her thumb brushing his knuckles with the same tenderness she used when helping him through a panic episode. "I will always come," she said, her voice carrying a quiet promise that felt stronger than anything Tyler or any bully could ever muster. "You're not alone, not ever." Malik's eyes glistened, not with fear this time, but with relief, deep, warm relief. The kind that settles into the bones after a long day of holding everything in. For the first time since starting the new school, for the first time in weeks, he felt something he had almost forgotten, the shape of hope. They walked past the park where other kids played, past the corner where he had once stood alone pretending to tie his shoes so no one would talk to him, past the street where he used to dread walking because Tyler and his friends hung around like storm clouds. Today none of that scared him. He wasn't alone. He had someone beside him who saw him, understood him, protected him without hesitation. Zara didn't lecture him. She didn't ask too many questions or push him to talk about the day. She just stayed beside him, steady like a lighthouse in the fog. Every few steps she glanced at him, checking his breathing, his posture, the way he held his notebook close to his chest. She knew all his tells, when he was overwhelmed, when he was scared, when he needed ground beneath him again. She had been learning them since the day he was born. "You did something really brave today," Zara said suddenly. Malik blinked up at her, confused. I did," she nodded. "You spoke in the principal's office. You told the truth even though it was hard." Malik lowered his gaze, kicking gently at a pebble. "My voice was shaking. And you still talked," she said. "Courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the hard thing even when you are scared." Malik didn't respond, but his grip on her arm tightened, a silent thank you. They turned a corner and reached their house, the familiar brick walls and small garden making Malik's shoulders ease even more. Home. A place where noise levels were predictable, where routines stayed the same, where Zara always understood him without needing explanations. Before going inside, Zara knelt in front of him, placing her hands gently on his shoulders. "Malik," she said, "I'm proud of you." His breath hitched, not with panic, but with emotion he didn't know how to put into words, so he leaned forward and hugged her. Zara wrapped her arms around him instantly, holding him tight, anchoring him. No judgment, no rush, just warmth. "You're safe," she murmured into his hair. "You're safe with me." Malik nodded against her shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, the knot in his chest loosened. The fear that had lived there like a constant shadow softened, fading at the edges. Inside the house, sunlight streamed through the living room window, dust particles floating like tiny sparks of magic. Malik stepped inside, and the air felt lighter. He set his notebook on the table with care, smoothing the cover as though it were a treasured artifact. Zara watched him for a moment, watched the way he moved, the way he breathed, the way a small smile finally began to form. Not a big one, just a gentle upward curve. But for Malik that was everything. "Zara," he said softly. Thank you." She didn't need him to say it. She already knew, but hearing it from him made her chest warm. "Anytime, little brother," she said, brushing his hair from his forehead. "I've got you." Malik nodded, because Zara wasn't just his sister. She was his protector, the person who stepped into storms so he wouldn't have to face them alone. She was his shield, strong enough to make bullies crumble and gentle enough to know exactly when to speak softly. She was his hero, not the kind with capes or superpowers, but the kind who shows up, who listens, who fights when he can't, who stands tall when he feels small. And for the first time since stepping into Riverside Middle School, Malik believed something he hadn't dared to hope before. Everything might finally be okay. The next week, something unexpected happened, something Malik never imagined would be part of his life at Riverside. It began quietly, almost shyly, like sunlight sneaking through closed curtains. At lunch on Monday, the same kids who once avoided him hesitated, not out of fear but out of curiosity. They didn't whisper about him anymore or stare at him like he was strange. Instead, they paused near his table, exchanging quick glances before one of them finally spoke. "Can we sit here?" Malik froze, unsure if it was a joke, unsure if this would turn into another trap. But the girl who asked, Emily, a quiet kid from his English class, was smiling in a way that felt real, not mocking, not forced, genuine. Malik nodded slowly. Emily sat down across from him, placing her lunchbox on the table. She looked around nervously for a moment, then her gaze landed on the corner of Malik's notebook peeking out of his backpack. "Are those your drawings?" she asked. Malik hesitated, then pulled it out and placed it gently on the table. Emily leaned in with interest, her eyes widening as she flipped through the pages, carefully, respectfully, as though afraid to bend even a corner. "These are amazing," she breathed. Malik's cheeks warmed. No one at school had ever complimented his art before. Most kids didn't even know he drew. Another student, Mateo, joined the table unexpectedly. He peered over Emily's shoulder. "Whoa, is that a superhero?" "Did you make him up?" Malik nodded again, unsure how to react to so much attention all at once. "He looks cool," Mateo said, pointing to a sketch of a caped figure with glowing hands. "What's his power?" Malik's voice almost failed him, but he managed a soft reply. "He helps people who feel invisible." Mateo grinned. "That's awesome." On Tuesday, something even more surprising happened. Ms. Collins, the art teacher, a woman with paint-stained sleeves and the brightest smile in the school, approached him before class started. "Malik," she said gently, "I heard from Principal Ward that you like drawing. Would you like to help me decorate the art room bulletin board? We're setting up a display for Creative Expression Week." Malik blinked in stunned silence. Teachers rarely asked him to participate in things like this. They usually assumed he was too shy, too quiet, too overwhelmed. But Ms. Collins didn't look worried or hesitant. She looked excited, encouraging, hopeful. Malik nodded and she beamed. "Wonderful. Bring some of your drawings tomorrow. I'd love to showcase your talent." Talent. The word echoed in Malik's mind the entire day. He had never been called talented by anyone except Zara and Aisha. Hearing it from a teacher felt like someone had dropped a warm ember into the center of his chest. By Wednesday, more kids began sitting with him. Some asked about his drawings. Others asked about his favorite superheroes, his favorite games, his favorite shows. Malik didn't always answer with words. Sometimes he pointed, sometimes he nodded, sometimes he passed his notebook across the table to draw a response, but no one laughed, no one complained. They waited, they listened. They tried to understand him in the way Zara always did, and slowly Malik found his place. Not because everyone suddenly understood autism, or because middle school magically became easier, or because bullies magically disappeared. No, the world didn't suddenly become perfect. Kids were still loud. Hallways were still overwhelming sometimes. Tyler still sent him occasional glares across the cafeteria, but he no longer came close, no longer taunted him, no longer acted like he owned the place. Something had shifted, something fundamental. The school saw Malik now. Not as the quiet boy who rocked when he panicked, not as the kid who rarely spoke, not as the one people avoided because they didn't know how to talk to him. They saw him as someone worth knowing, someone creative, someone kind, someone safe to sit with. And it didn't come from some miracle or sudden change in the universe. It came from something simpler, deeper, stronger: love. One person's unwavering, fierce, unstoppable love. Because someone, Zara, loved him hard enough to stand beside him when he couldn't stand alone, loved him loudly enough that the whole school heard it, loved him fiercely enough to fight for him without hesitation, loved him consistently enough to show everyone else how he deserved to be treated. And that love changed everything. It didn't erase Malik's fears, but it gave him courage. It didn't silence the world's noise, but it gave him a safe place within it. It didn't make him someone different. It simply allowed him to be himself without fear. And for the first time since starting at Riverside, Malik didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel small. He didn't feel like a shadow lurking behind walls. He felt seen, he felt understood, he felt valued. And as he walked home that afternoon, the sun warm on his face, his notebook tucked safely under his arm, he realized something beautiful. His new beginning wasn't about school changing. It was about him finally having the space to grow. And that space existed because someone believed he deserved it.